Good afternoon, good evening, Saints fans. Welcome back to the Dat Confessional podcast. Welcome back to what is one of the worst Saints teams we've seen in years. And today it's a rough one. It's understandable if you're frustrated. Let's say two positives real quick before we get into what will definitely be a podcast episode of our lamentations, of our frustrations, and our ire. Because let's just be honest. 2 weeks. You had the week. And then you had the bye week, and your offense comes out and scores 3 points. We're going to talk trash about a lot of different things. But you know what? Shout out to a couple people. Number one, shout out to Cameron Jordan. Cameron Jordan just finds a way to keep getting sacks. Now, will Cameron Jordan have a double-digit season? No. I mean, unlikely. Is it possible? Yes. Very, very unlikely. That said, this man got a sack today against the Atlanta Falcons. And for that, I will forever respect him. Thank you for being you, my friend. He's up to 4.5 sacks. You've got Chase Young pick one today. He's at 4. Technically, Cameron Jordan is tied for the lead for this team in sacks this season. And to me, that's actually a great microcosm, a great example of what's so wrong with the New Orleans Saints. It's the best players are the ones that shouldn't be the best. Cameron Jordan should not be your best anymore. But let's talk about what we saw. We saw several things, including good, bad, and ugly. Lots of the latter. Now, possession-wise, New Orleans goes fumble. That's a problem. Now, it's a sack fumble, and to a degree, blame needs to be placed on Tyler Shuck for this. And I want to make sure everybody hears me loud and clear. Interceptions are a QB problem most of the time. So it's context for every turnover, but generally a quarterback problem. Fumbles on sacks. Also, even if a lineman lets it through, you fumble, it's on you. That's just how it is. Context is important. And just to be consistent, because historically, I love to say this on the show. By the way, good to see everybody here. Good to see Randy. Good to see Creole. Good to see Quiet Storm. Good to see Salmond. Good to see John Moss Jr. All those regulars here who come to the stream, who come to the live show knowing how the New Orleans Saints are. Shout out to y'all for being Hoodats. But in terms of consistency, I like to keep it consistent. So when we look at the past, when we pull up games from 5 years ago, we just see fumble, interception. And what do we naturally do? We know who to blame is, quarterbacks. I'm going to do the same thing here. Now, next drive, missed field goal. We're going to see multiple of those in this run-up here, so be warned. Punt, missed field goal, turnover on downs, finally a field goal, then punt, downs, and interception. And even though it's an interception with 10 seconds left-ish in the game, is still an interception for Tyler Shuck. So that was your list. Why did I go through that? Because one thing has been true. Doesn't matter if it's Tyler Shuck at quarterback. Doesn't matter if it's Spencer Rattler at quarterback. This offense is a missed handoff. Yeah, you're right, Edwin. Apologies. It's been a long 3.5 hours since the game started. Correct, Edwin. For reference, though, what I was trying to get across is, and thank you for the correction. What I was trying to get across is that when it happens for things like a quarterback fumbling the ball or an interception, we don't really care about context 5 years down the road. We always apply the blame to the quarterback. That's all I was trying to do, but you are right. That's a proper correction. I'm frustrated, so I misspoke. I apologize for that. But one thing I do want to really speak on, Kellen Moore. We are now talking about a guy who has had almost a full season calling the Saints offense. I mean, you're over in double-digit games. There's only a few games left. You got 6 games left in the season. We've seen Kellen Moore in 11 games. You've seen 2/3 of a season. One thing that we've consistently not seen from Kellen Moore, it doesn't matter if it's Spencer Rattler, if it's Tyler Shuck, if it's Taysom Hill, who we have seen get more snaps and even some QB looks. When it comes to Kellen Moore, I am very much questioning his ability as a play caller just in general, right? You've got 3 drives for the New Orleans Saints that went 13 plays or more, yet you never punched it in the end zone. You had multiple plays down at the 1-yard line, never punch it into the end zone. And I will absolutely acknowledge that it's not all on Kellen Moore. We've said it all season long. Why does Blake Groupie still have a job? Again, I hate to be that guy. I don't like calling for people's jobs. It's not something I enjoy. However, Blake Groupie, 2 missed field goals, and one of them is chip shot. 2 missed field goals. And it's not like Groupie is new to this. Like, oh, he's just having, some issues, but he's been consistent all season. No, coming into tonight, Blake Groupie was connecting on 73.9% of his field goals, one of the worst numbers in the NFL. That number has dropped. He's going to be around 70% after tonight. Actually, I think he drops below 70% after tonight. We can do that math real quick. Let me bust out the handy-dandy calculator live here on the stream. So he's had 25 field goal attempts, and he's had 18 makes. Yeah, that's not good. That's really not good. It's not as terrible as I thought it'd be. It drops him down to 72%, but that's still right at the bottom of the league right now. And I'm not trying to be that guy to Blake Groupie, but you're 27. You've been in the league a couple years now. There's just no excuse. There's just not. Not to mention where he's missing the field goals, right? You look at it, he's missing field goals that are 30 yards out. He's missing field goals that are 40 yards out. This is the NFL, ladies and gentlemen. Those are supposed to be gimmies. I can get it if he misses a 55-yarder. I can live with it even. I cannot live with chip shots being missed. So that's one thing. Defensively, the New Orleans Saints, I thought, had a great first half. It started to unravel a little bit in the second half. If anything, if you're coming into this and you didn't see the game, only reason the New Orleans Saints scored a touchdown was because of the defense. They scored more points than the offense. Very reminiscent of a 1990s New Orleans Saints game. And for you older Saints fans, you'll remember those type of games. Not with fond memories likely, but with memories nonetheless. So here we are today talking about topics we don't want to talk about. So as we're talking about who did terrible, I do want to give a shout out to the defense for at least showing up for some of this game. And we did see the Atlanta Falcons show that they're not a great team. The Atlanta Falcons were 3 for 12 on third down. Those are amazing numbers. Like, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're very happy with that. Now, I don't want to say there's no problems, because you look at the running game between Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, well, they ran all over the New Orleans Saints, right? They ran together for over 110 yards. Together, they averaged over 4 yards a carry. Bijan Robinson obviously is a problem, even though we do talk about a lot that running backs in today's NFL are not going to be the ones that take you to the Super Bowl. They can definitely be a star piece that magnify your team, but they're not generally going to be that big piece that takes you where you want to go. They certainly did a really good job against the Saints today, where the New Orleans Saints' leading rusher was actually Tyler Shuck. That tells you how it is. Obviously, Alvin Kamara had an injury to his knee, had one good run today before going out. Then you saw Devin Neal come in. Devin Neal had better results in the passing game than he did in the running game today. Had one great play that in particular I really loved. I went 18 yards. Just a great job with yards after the catch and making plays happen. You have a couple of those from Neal. But, I mean, was he Alvin Kamara? No. Especially in the running game. I think a lot of that comes back to the offensive line, because it doesn't matter if it was Tyler Shuck, Daniil, Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara. Nobody could find any running lanes. And the interior offensive line is a problem. We've known this for several weeks now. I don't want to gloss over it, but that will affect your yards per carry average for sure. Tyler Shuck averaged 3 yards a carry. Devin Neal averaged 2.6. Taysom Hill, who had the most carry attempts today, 1.7, which is one of his worst rushing games in New Orleans Saints history when he's been handed the ball that much. It's one of his worst performances. Alvin Kamara, 3 for 11. And then finally, Tipton did have that 1 11-yarder when they got just one little piece of trickeration, one little small piece. Raheem throws in. Good to see Raheem. Says, I'm tired of Kellen Moore and his terrible offense. Voodoo coming to his house. He's going to wake up with 2 left feet. Won't be able to cha-cha slide anymore. Look, to your point, he's been a problem. And I do want to point out that he's not the only one. One of the first comments that we had the podcast live tonight was from one of our listeners, which from Quiet Storm. Says, CO, that being Chris Olave, makes you miss Michael Thomas. His lack of aggression and want to is disappointing. Michael Thomas is going to fight for everything. Too bad the front office chose him, that being Chris Olave, over a real wide receiver X factor. Look, I've said it for a while, so I don't want to harp on this too much. Chris Olave is a great number 2. He's an okay number 1. That's where we're really at with Chris Olave. That's where we're really at with Chris Olave. He's a good number 2. They need a great number 1. Now, you can tell they've tried to make moves to open up time for players to get on the field, right? Devin Neal has more snaps now. When you've gotten rid of Brandon Cooks and you traded away who I really, really appreciated in Rashid Shaheed, you now have more snaps available to guys. So you had Juwan Johnson filling in his normal role, 6 catches, 7 attempts, 7.5 average. I mean, that's a pretty solid day for him. I wouldn't say Juwan Johnson had a bad game. Certainly not one that I'm pointing the finger at when we're playing the blame game. Chris Olave, though, that 9 for 13 for 70 is a little bit deceptive. I feel like Chris Olave had multiple chances, especially on the deep ball, that better wide receivers would have come down with. Now, we can get into the debate of whether you want to put more blame on Tyler Shuck, Chris Olave, or is it more the throw? Is it more the receiver? I'm saying the same thing about Chris Olave I said with Spencer Rattler. I think Olave just simply isn't that guy. He doesn't have the grit. He doesn't have that little bit of extra that makes you great. As the people in the chat said, the want. It's just not there. And then when you combine that with guys like Cesar Ruiz and the interior of the offensive line not being good, with a backup center, with your left guard, being a turnstile at this point of the season, you're just in a position where you do the best you can, but at the same time, I think it's important for Saints fans to call out what's bad, because we discussed 2 weeks ago some of the comments made by Gail Benson, the owner, and the trust that she has in Mickey Loomis, and he's doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. Cool. I'm glad you have faith in the people that your husband had faith in, but hard to have faith in this team. Hard to have faith in this team right now. Now, I see a couple in the chat. Randy says Devin Neal looked great. I don't agree with that. I don't think Devin Neal looked great today. I think Devin Neal looked passable. There's nothing about today's game with Devin Neal that made me go, oh, Devin Neal's the running back of the future, though I do think he's a good young piece who's part of a good rotation. But you're talking about being a good piece of a rotation of something that is, as you can see on the screen if you're watching this live, it's just not good. Again, I routed off the rushing stats, but it's not even just about the stats. It's just about how this team played as a whole. You look at them on third down, 5 of 16. They just couldn't move the ball very well. And this was actually a game, when it comes to penalties, that the New Orleans actually played cleaner than they've been playing most of the season. Only 4 penalties for 36 yards. This was not a bad game for them. They dominated in terms of time possession, 32 minutes, 51 seconds. Again, the New Orleans Saints win a lot of the categories that we said would result in them winning more football games, but they didn't today. I mean, the score is, well, it's the most important part, but you look at the stats, you think the Saints won. I mean, they had 21 first downs to only 13 for Atlanta. They had a better third down efficiency, right? They looked the part, but they couldn't finish it off, which is what I said at the very beginning of this episode. This team, and I think that falls back to coaching more than anything, this team can't finish. And this is exactly why I also didn't want to start Tyler Shuck yet. Well, this is why I said Spencer Rattler should have just stayed in. Because I think at the core, this team has a talent deficiency, but it also has an issue where more isn't giving you more. In fact, this offense is worse than last year. This offense is worse than Pete Carmichael. It's worse than Clint Kubiak. And that's saying something, more so the former than the latter. And as a Saints fan, I mean, the only way we can really speak truthfully comes down to buying tickets. But not many people are going to Saints games right now. It's really sad. It's really sad. And it doesn't matter who's in right now. I feel like no matter who's the quarterback, no matter who's the running back, no matter who's the wide receiver, I don't trust the coaching behind any of it. And that goes for every major sports franchise in New Orleans, by the way. I'm not trying to drag this into being From the Wing, the Pelicans podcast that I once had, but I do want to say there's an issue top to bottom, and I mean that literally, GM to coaching on both teams in New Orleans. It is not a good time to be a New Orleans sports fan. Now, truth be told, good to see you. What up? Kellen Moore is more sunshiny than the sunshiny Raheem Morris. Glass ain't always half full. He needs to go off sometimes. I agree. And we'll see if he can become a better version of himself. But right now, it's tough. And it isn't helped by the fact that the New Orleans Saints lose to the division rival. Maybe I feel differently if you had lost to the New York Jets. Maybe I'm not as frustrated, and maybe I'm not pointing fingers like I am losing 24-10 to the Atlanta Falcons, but it's losing to the Atlanta Falcons that in particular makes it bad. Now, giving up 5 sacks is a testament to how this offensive line. I mean, you're missing 2 starters, right? And your right guard is obviously in need of replacement, but there's not really anything you can do about it at the moment. So you traded Trevor Penning, who's not exactly doing great over with the Chargers. You lost McCoy, and even though I do believe McCoy is arguably the best center the New Orleans Saints have ever had At this point, given his age and injuries, clearly that's something you're looking at needing a future as well. So when you're looking at the problem for New Orleans, it starts at the very top, to where at this point, and call me a sensationalist, call me that I'm being too emotional, it's not just the teams, it's more. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. At the beginning of the season, we were a little bit more cheery, a little bit rosy in our cheeks, a little bit more maybe. But right now, how can you have that? When you see the New Orleans Saints lose 24-10 to the Atlanta Falcons, and that is after, by the way, having your defense play a game that you, again, I see so many people on Saints social media blaming the defense. Man, this defense can't stop anybody. This defense held Atlanta to 24 points, man. I mean, there are teams in the NFL who would kill for their defense to consistently hold teams to low 20 scoring. And yet this offense can't score. The defense scores more points than the offense 11 weeks into a season. There's simply no excuse for it. Good teams find a way. Let me give you an example. If you were watching the NFL today, you would have seen the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens looked terrible in the first half. Embarrassing even. Why? Because we know how good the Baltimore Ravens can be. For those that didn't catch that game, the Baltimore Ravens were playing the New York Jets. And at the first half, that was a very close game. That was the New York Jets were actually winning going into halftime. But good teams find a way to say, hey, we're actually playing piss poor right now. We need to get our crap together. And you find a way to fix it. And they did. They ended up winning that game 23-10. Now, should Baltimore beat New York? Absolutely they should. But they weren't, and they found a way. Nobody on this New Orleans Saints team, nobody. And I say that after giving praise to Cameron Jordan. Love that the man, 4 years old, still putting in the work, trying to make it happen. I've given credit to Reed for that interception return. Beautiful, thank you. But nobody on this team is showing you what a good team has. There's nobody. You really at the point where who can you really say we're building around next year? There are a couple of pieces I can name. Your left tackle, your right tackle, good pieces for the future. Really good pieces for the future. But you look around the offense, that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're talking about really building the future, if you're being honest with yourself, that you can really rely on in the future, of everybody on offense, there's two people. Just two. Now, that isn't to say that Tyler Shuck, nor even, yes, I'm still going to mention his name, Spencer Rattler, shouldn't be given chances to succeed in the future. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying the only two people who have shown you these are worth keeping long-term this season are your left tackle and your right tackle. And that's a depressing statement to make. And again, I'm very upset because it's Falcons hate week. I've said it many times. I'm okay if the New Orleans Saints have bad years, but if there's 2 games you win every year, 2 games you win every year, it's the Atlanta Falcons. And that's serious business here. Cameron Jordan gets it. I don't think Kellen Moore does. I don't think Kellen Moore gets how important this rivalry is. I didn't feel that burning passion, that need to win, that make it happen captain attitude. I don't feel that. I feel in a lot of ways, correct me if those who are here live, there are 100 amazing Saints fans. Shout out to the Who Dats who are here live. In a lot of ways, Kellen Moore reminds me of Dennis Allen. Let me explain how. Dennis Allen, number one, is a better coordinator based on what we've seen for sure. But both of them have this really, to me, irritating posture where they aren't expressive. They don't get in your face. They don't try to get the emotions into the game that are needed to give that spark that sends you to the next level. Kellen Moore just doesn't show it. He doesn't have it. Maybe he does and he hasn't shown it to anybody. Maybe he's just biding his time till next year, and this year is just one of those like, we'll do what we can, but we're clearly going for year number 2. Maybe that's how he is. But I'm looking at it from someone who covered the team professionally. I'm looking at it from a fan who's followed this team his entire life. Where's the passion? Where's the desire? Where's the anger of being absolutely embarrassed? Is there any other word for it? Am I being dramatic? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm being honest. At home to the Atlanta Falcons, where is the fire? It needs to be real. You need to be able to see what's important to not only this team, but to this city. And how can you not have the fire it takes to win this football game? Not even to win, to when it's close, to do what you have to do. And they do have somebody on the coaching staff who is that type of personality. If you want a example of it, shout out to John and Rainey and James who are calling out, is Darren Rizzi. Now, at the same time, there's a reason. Generally speaking, special teams coaches don't become head coaches. There are exceptions to that rule. What's an example of an exception to that rule? Oh, the team I was just talking about, the Baltimore Ravens, coached by Harbaugh, who is a special teams coach. But what is he? He's also a leader of men. And one thing that I've said that the Saints need on the field and on the sidelines for years now is a leader of men. That was my same problem with Dennis Allen, and I currently have the same problem with Kellen Moore. The only issue is I actually have more of an issue with Kellen Moore because at least with DA, I trusted him as a coordinator. Right now, I have no reason to trust Kellen Moore as a coordinator. And I don't believe he has the assertiveness needed to lead men. I just don't. And again, maybe it's the frustrations coming out. Darren Rizzi's there, knowing how Mickey Loomis is in terms of structuring a team, we know that Kellen Moore is going to have a year or two. But heck, at this rate, Kellen Moore gets another year, continues to go 2-8, fire and put Darren Rizzi there and just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. Because 11 games in, you should see this offense, even with subpar talent, doing something, scoring points. But let's rattle off how much the Saints have scored this year. They've scored 13 points, 21, 13, 19, 26, 19, 14, 3, 10, 17, 10. In fact, it's been almost 2 months since the New Orleans Saints offense has scored more than 20 points, and you have to go all the way back to the New York Giants game, October 5th, all the way back in week 5. Because remember, the New Orleans Saints are going into Miami next week, so that's going to be the 30th. Maybe they get it there, but if they don't, they'll have to do it in Tampa, which seems unlikely at this point. This team could legitimately go the rest of the season, maybe all the way to the New York Jets game on the 21st, before this offense scores 20 points again. And this is with not only an offensive-minded head coach, multiple offensive head coaches on this roster with that experience, multiple former quarterbacks on this head coaching staff with experience, and your offense scored 3 points a day. Even if we want to be very kind and say it's 9 points if you count the missed field goals from your kicker, that's still pathetic. That's abhorrent. You want to know who else scored 9 points? The Monroe Moccasins hockey team scored 9 points. A hockey team scored 9 points against the Biloxi Breakers today. You're getting outscored by minor league hockey. And does it have anything to do with anything? No, but that's how pissed I am. To where if you have to see good sports in Louisiana right now, you know what you need? To watch minor league hockey. That's what you need. If you want to see good, successful, winning sports, you need to see minor league hockey. By the way, shout out to the Monroe Moccasins, who are second in their conference and won today 9-1 in a hockey game. For those unfamiliar with hockey, that tends to be a sport where you score like 3 goals, 4 goals. Think of it more like soccer, but with ice and sticks and a whole lot of white people. And yet, here we are watching the New Orleans Saints professional football team score 3 points on offense at home against the division rivals. I don't know if I've been this disgusted in a while. And again, it's Falcons hate week, so maybe I'm overly emotional. I apologize for those who come to this channel for film studies and analytics. I've not rattled off many stats tonight. I've rattled off a lot of my frustration. But this is also one of those things where they made you watch this game. They started this game at 3 p.m. Bro, you should have started this game at 3 a.m. Nobody wanted to watch this game or be at this game. You should have just ran this as a simulator in Madden 26 and just said, heck it. Y'all go home. Y'all go train some more. Forfeit the next one. I really don't care. I mean, you might as well have another bye week. Just call Miami and be like, hey, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. Y'all have this one. We're going to be running bear crawls in stadiums until we learn how to score more than 3 points on offense. Coming off a bye week. You have the bye week and this week to prepare for your biggest division rival, and you get 3 points on offense. Like, that's just, come on. What? For those who are listeners on iTunes, Google, iHeart Radio, Spotify, thank you for being a Houdat. Thank you for putting up with the New Orleans Saints this year. Thank you for putting up with me in this podcast this year. Things have definitely not gone our way in a lot of ways. Shout out to Elias, still writing articles, right? I've not hit him up. Not only has it just been rough to want to get together to do the podcast, but I've had a lot going on in family life. Obviously, I was sick in the hospital. A lot been going on. So life's not been kind, but that's kind of the point of where we're at. And I'm sure people like Ted in the chat, Leo, James, we come to the New Orleans Saints to escape from how bad life can be sometimes. That's what our sports team should be, right? We're not getting it right now. Did Vele get any legit targets in the red zone? That's a good question. I actually don't have anything reliable on that. Let me rewatch the game and get back to you. Now, Vele did have 3 catches on 7 targets, and there were some ones he missed. I'm just going to put it that way. But there were some good plays there. Was it worth trading a 4th-round pick for? Well, that's debatable, but I don't remember there being a play for him in the red zone, which means that where we had multiple of those opportunities down at the 1-yard line, nope, don't use the guy that's actually over 6 foot. Okay. So that's a decision. And again, this goes back to why I complain about Moore. And Hugh asked, how much is Kellen Moore's fault and how much is the O-line? It's definitely both. Can I give you an example? So if you are watching live, we have the playlist up where we can actually look at drives. You know, what's going on? What is actually happening? And you can see some drives that if I told you where they started, what the down and distances were, you would assume, oh, well, they probably scored a touchdown here. You would assume that. But hey, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you would assume wrong. Let me give you some examples. Taysom Hill, no gain inside the 10. Taysom Hill, 2 yards to get down to the 5. Then we got 1st and 5. That was after a 4th and 1. 1st and 5. Tyler Shuck, 4 yards. Now we've got 2nd and 1. 1-yard line. Tyler Shuck, left guard, no gain. All right, direct snap to Taysom Hill. Fumble Rooski. All right. Well, intentional grounding ends up being that play. So it becomes a nothing burger. That's the one time you see Blake Grupe score a field goal. But you add 5 plays inside the 10-yard line. None of them that honestly really aimed at the end zone anyway. And you can't score a touchdown. Is that the only time? Nay. Let's go back to the previous drive. Let's go back and find other examples of the New Orleans Saints having an opportunity in their area and not being able to succeed. 1st and 8 at the Atlanta 8. Tyler Shuck, right guard, 3 yards. Taysom Hill, right guard, 3 yards. Down to the 2, 3rd and 2. Tyler Shuck, left side, 1 yard. And then 4th and 1 on the 1. Taysom Hill, incomplete pass to Vele. By the way, there's our answer. Vele did have that one attempt. It was from the Taysom Hill pass. To quote my good friend Elias, getting too cute there, Kellen Moore. How about you pass it when you're at the 5-yard line? Have a little bit more space. You know, why wait till the 4th and 1 and try to get cute? All for a guy who, look, as much as I love Taysom Hill, let's be honest. If you watch Taysom Hill and you're being honest, Taysom Hill right now is not what he was 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Taysom Hill is not as fast. He's not as strong. He's not as good. Now, I'm not saying he can't be effective, but Taysom Hill is not as good now as he was a few years ago. He's, to a degree, living on his reputation. He's 35 years old, though. I don't expect him to be great. I expect him to be fine. Jerome Bettis was averaging 3 yards a carry his final couple years. He was still solid enough to be relied upon, but it required good coaching to make that believable. Ain't nothing believable right now about this Saints offense. And that goes back to Kellen Moore to answer the question previously asked. Yes, there's problems in the offensive line. Yes, there's problems in the wide receiver room. But it always comes back to the head coach. Who's in charge of the play calls? Who's in charge of the designs? Who knows who's the best players on this team? Should be Kellen Moore. Obviously, the New Orleans Saints fans know, but do they know? Do the people on the sideline know? I'm not convinced. And here we are today. And then when you lose somebody like Alvin Kamara, it's tough to say next man up when you can't trust the guy calling the plays can do the things needed to make that play happen, right? And when I mean play happen, I mean things like Sean Payton used to do. And I hate bringing up his name, but you're looking at 3 head coaches now, if we're counting an interim head coach. You're looking at 3 coaches now. Can't cut it. Not good enough. Well, 3-ish. I'm putting a little bit too much credit to our coordinators who have a chance to call plays. But that's how far back you got to go. And even though Sean Payton is gone, I'm not advocating for him to come back. What I am saying is there's just a certain moxie that you have to carry, a certain swagger you have to walk with, a certain belief in yourself, borderline narcissism, I would say, to be a great coach or player in the NFL. If you've ever met an NFL quarterback, all of them share one trait. They're very confident. They are. I've met a few that's not the case, but generally speaking, they're very confident. Same thing with coaches. I've never really spoken to a good head coach that was like, yeah, well, blah, 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 blah. They are very direct. And whether they're right or wrong, they have intent with their words, and they have conviction in their actions. I'll give you an example of Sean Payton. Bit him in the ass. But remember in the playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings where he's doing the skull clap at the fans? Look, I'm not happy how that turned up, and I'm sorry to bring up painful memories to you, chat. But would I rather have that style of person leading my team? 100%. And some people can disagree with that, and that's completely fine. But I need that passion, and I don't see it from anybody on the field or on the sidelines. And that's a problem. Because usually we can be like, hey, maybe Rattler or Shuck or Neal or Olave or they're sparking, and we can look at building to the future. But if you don't trust what they're putting together, how can you really look forward to what's there? Here we are. John says, I'm not happy about it, but I think we're stuck with Kellen Moore for at least another 2 years. I think you've definitely got a minimum of 2 years of Kellen Moore, probably a minimum of 3. I will say this, though. Even Mickey Loomis won't keep a coach around. If Kellen Moore, let's say he only wins one more game the rest of the season. If he only wins one more game, so 3 wins, and then he does the same thing next season, they're also going to pull him. And I do firmly believe that before anybody's like, Rev, there's no way Mickey Loomis isn't going to do that. Mickey Loomis is not going to allow this team. Y'all can dislike Mickey Loomis, and y'all can want Mickey Loomis to be replaced. I do. But Mickey Loomis is not going to let this team have 2 straight 3-win seasons and not replace the head coach. So he has to get better. So it is a call out to Moore. If he doesn't get better, he's gone too. And if your resume is, hey, I had 2 seasons where we went 3-14, you're not getting many head coaching offers in the near future after that. So Kellen Moore, get better. Get gooder, as the kids say. Ted says Gail is not a successful business person. What makes you think she'll be a successful owner? That's fair. Now, I'm not trying to down Miss Gail as a person. I think she's a wonderful lady. I think she has a compassionate heart, and I think she really cares for the city of New Orleans. But does that mean I believe she knows what the heck she's doing as the owner of the 2 entities that bring the most money into the city? No, I don't think she has any freaking clue. And again, that's not an insult to her. This isn't her thing. She wasn't a career businesswoman. She married Tom Benson. Again, I'm not saying she's a bad woman. I'm not saying anything negative about her as a person. I'm speaking to her experience. Do I trust her to do what's right to lead this team? Of course not. Why? Because she openly said 2 weeks ago that the front office of the New Orleans Saints are doing a great job. And even if you're the most ardent defender of Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland and the entire group in the front office, really hard to say they're doing a great job when your football team has won 2 games. Maybe if we were 3 weeks in, sure. But that's not the case. But hey, we'll see what things look like next week. Right now, I'm frustrated. I'm mad. Everything's negative. Everything's negative. Maybe I'll feel different after Miami. We'll see. But I do want to say one thing about the chat, the Hoodats, all of Hoodat Nation. Appreciate y'all. The fact that y'all are here, the fact that y'all are spending time with this team, given the state of where we all see they're at, really shows how diehard and true that y'all are. Y'all clearly bleed black and gold, so shout out to you. But like I said before, if you truly want to see good sports right now, you better hit up your minor league hockey. It's about the only time you're going to find good sports in the state of Louisiana right now, because I think nobody wants me to talk about the LSU Tigers. If we even mention the name of the Pelicans, we're all going to start puking in our seats. And the New Orleans Saints are, well, there's no other way to put it. The New Orleans Saints are currently the worst they've been since Mike Ditko was the head coach. So here we are. Thankfully, there are a couple of bright spots in this state when it comes to sports. I would probably throw Tulane up in there. That's debatable, but we can throw Tulane. and say, hey, Tulane's doing all right, because they're second in the AAC right now. Right. So, I mean, give a little bit of love to Tulane, but certainly not giving any love to LSU. And if you're out there as you're a diehard LSU fan, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean to you, but LSU football doesn't look like LSU football. LSU football is sad right now. I mean, not to rub it in, but LSU freaking lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, bruh. You barely beat Western Kentucky. Yeah, it's anyway, I love and appreciate y'all Hoodats. That's what I was really trying to say. I love and appreciate you Hoodats. Thank you all for being loyal to this team, for being loyal to this podcast, being loyal to me and my family. I want to say thank y'all and I appreciate y'all. Hoodat, God bless. I'll catch you on the next episode. We'll see you then. Thank you for being you. See you then.